and now I will allow them to pray in the Wailing Wall, to have the Jewish quarter, when in fact he has nothing.
Mr. Ben
So we come here.
Mr. Ben I believe you missed the point. The point is that East Jerusalem and the places on which Mr. Arafat was speaking, they all fall within the occupied territories, the territories that have been occupied in 1967. So they fall within the framework of Resolution 242. Therefore, he has that right. They were not under the sovereignty nor the presence of Israel or the administration of Israel. We are talking about Resolution 242 that deals with the territories that have been occupied in 1967, including the holy places, including the old city, including East Jerusalem. That's why he says, whether I stay there, he has that right, because those are the territories that have been occupied militarily by you in 1967. You were not there before 1967. You were not there before 1967.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't change the fact that this was...
What changes the fact then?
Just a minute. It doesn't change the fact that this is the capital of the Jewish people throughout history.
No, what do you mean by throughout history? Before 1948, where were you? 1947. Was it the capital of Israel? When was it the capital of Israel?
The capital of the Jewish people. It was never the capital of any other people or state.
Look, Shlomo, we are not quarreling. We want to help each other. But also, yes, we want to help each other. But don't talk about capital of the people. What do you mean capital of the people of Israel?
And of the state.
What state? The state. When did you establish this state?
No, just a minute. The state of Israel.
Yes, when was it established? In the 40s.
AD. Just a minute. It was never the capital of any other state in history. This is a fact.
No, it's not a fact.
No, yes, it is a fact.
Not a fact.
Are you going
if you want us to accept your facts, that's fine.
No, it is in the books of history.
No. You announced that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel after the establishment of Israel. When? 50 years ago.
But
that's all.
You are missing the point.
But then you are talking about issues that Yasser Arafat raised that fall within the Resolution 242 countries, territories that have been occupied in 1967.
I'm trying to be very precise. I say that never in history Jerusalem was the capital of any state but of the Jewish state. This was until the year 70 AD. A. B. The war of 1967 was a typical war of self-defense. I was no, sir.
To raise issues and back.
Yes. Yes, I should raise. Of course.
You should
because we did not.
I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. What I'm convinced of, what we can talk about is how to build peace and establish
exactly.
peace. But to tell me that it was capital for 7,000 years, that's not proven in history.
No,
to tell me that it was a war of self-defense or so, I can tell you that it was a war of aggression.
No, sir.
But why should we enter into this?
No,
why shouldn't we talk about peace in the future? Why should we hammer on the negative side?
Precisely
hammer on the positive side. Hammer on the positive side. Build peace. Don't go back to history and say, you see, this was a war of self-defense against aggression. What kind of aggression? You occupied territories for so many years.
Because we were attacked.
Building settlements on territories that do not belong to you.
Okay, let me... To understand, where do you want us to go? Where are you taking the Arab-Israeli peace with settlements every day announcing formally thousands of additional houses, which means thousands of Arab houses demolished, which means thousands of Arab people evicted, which means that what kind of negotiation, what are we negotiating on? How can we negotiate while the territory is being changed day by day? So this is a question. We want you to answer it. Why didn't you answer it while you are taking the floor? And what about the initiative of peace, the Arab initiative of peace? Have you accepted it? Have you come up with any other initiative? Well, I'm so sorry. You are a master talker, Mr. Perez, President Perez. And as you know, I respect you. We are all friends. We were foreign ministers together at the same time. But please, we cannot be taken for granted, and we are no fools, or we are no more the fool.
The situation in Gaza was not a reaction. The assault against the Gazans was not just a reaction for some rockets being launched against southern Israel. And here I would open some brackets to say that we are against anything that would affect children, women, civilians, be them Palestinians or Israelis. And then continue to say that this situation in Gaza and in Palestine is a situation of foreign military occupation. So people and siege and blockade. Gaza is living within a blockade, a very severe one. The West Bank is under military occupation with barriers, with colonies, that's settlements. So the Palestinians are trying to express themselves, to find a future for themselves. You cannot ask people in Gaza living in starvation and hunger because of the blockade, the very sinister blockade, and then ask them to be calm and ask them, why do you throw stones against your occupiers? It is against the nature of people. Against the nature of people. You strangle them, you starve them, and then ask them to be quiet. And then, as has been discussed now, the question of smuggling. Of course, smuggling is illegal, illicit trade and the illicit movement of things, commodities and so on, including perhaps arms. You strangle them. Not a single window of opportunity. And then talk to them about illicit trade. If you want to prevent this, you have to open the crossing points. You have to give them food. You have to give them water, to give them medicine. It is a miserable life that the Palestinians have lived and until now are living in Gaza because of the blockade that Israel has imposed on them for 3 years now. Number two, another fact. The Palestinians believed the call for democracy. There was some policies, international policies at certain time calling on the Middle East, apply democracy. Democracy is the solution for everything, and it happens that I agree with that. The Palestinians believed the advice, ran elections, Hamas won, and half an hour, 25 minutes after the announcement of the results of the election, Hamas was served notice that aid will be suspended, and then came the blockade, a severe blockade, and hence Hamas was put on the defensive. But very much, as Prime Minister Erdogan has said, the people in Gaza are not only Hamas, it's only an organization among other organizations, but the people, 1.5 million people, of women, of children, of old people, they were attacked and they paid the price for this game that is going on between Israel, Hamas, and the game that has been caused, as is being caused until now, by the military occupation. Why Hamas was listened to in the occupied territories, within the Palestinian ranks, in the Middle East, within the Arab world? Why? Because it has a logic. They said, all right, President Abu Mazen, go and negotiate. And if there is something useful coming out of your negotiations, we will certainly support you. And in fact, they are on record as having said, we are ready to accept a Palestinian state within the borders of 1967, but we are not going to sign any paper until we see what is the result of that. So, President Abu Mazen didn't bring anything. Did not bring anything out of 1 full year of negotiations with the current Israeli government. That is what he said. He is on record as having said that. And in fact, he said it on this stage last year. I believe it was the Prime Minister Salam Fayyad. So this is the situation. It is not a question of Israel reacting to some rockets. It is much deeper than that. It is an action of occupation, an action of blockade, then a reaction of resistance, then the reaction of destruction carried out by Israel. Okay, that has happened. Are we going to stop here and the end of the world will occur? No. Perhaps all of us now are called upon to save the situation. As the Secretary General has just said, there are 3 or 4 things that have to be done. A ceasefire, a strong ceasefire, sustainable ceasefire, opening of the crossings, stopping the illicit traffic, and the conciliation between the Palestinians. that we have to do. And I want you to know that I do not absolve ourselves on the Arab side from also committing mistakes. But no mistakes, no mistake we have committed can compete with the major mistake that has been committed by Israel in destroying Gaza and killing all those people in only 20 days. Again, we try to involve the United Nations rather than to involve shooting and more bloodshed. Unfortunately, in the last several years, up until this January, and it was before January 20th, the philosophy was, no, keep the Security Council away. Give Israel a chance to do what they were set to do. We have witnessed that back in 2006 in Lebanon, and we witnessed that back this January in New York. But this is a long story. I don't think the time will allow us to do so, to explain it in full. Now, what should we do? We have a new administration in the United States. What President Obama has said is reassuring. Change. He addressed the Arab world through one of our major channels called العربية from Dubai, addressed us and talked to us. We listened, we heard, we understood. He sent his special envoy, Senator Mitchell, who is a very reasonable man. We discussed with him, we are going to discuss again with him, and I believe there are those prospects of the United States returning back to the role of honest broker, which we missed for the last several years. This is a key point for the future, that the United States gets back to the role of honest broker that listens to this side and say, yes, you are right on this, but you are wrong on that. And to the other side too, the same. This we have not seen in the last several years. Okay, now this is the first positive point. We hope that we are right in our assessment and in our hopes. The second is the Arab Initiative. We are ready. Formally, officially, at the highest level, all of us are committed to establish peace with Israel, to recognize Israel, to normalize with Israel, and to carry on all our commitments in accordance with Security Council resolutions, the Madrid Conference decisions, and whatever agreements we have signed with, or that has been signed between any Arab country and Israel. We are ready for that. But the point is that we have not received any answer from Israel for the last 7 years. President Peres is a very eloquent man. He says that we accept, but this is just a good expression of words. There is no authorized decision taken by the government of Israel to respond to the most authorized message sent by an Arab summit held back in 2002. So our position is fully authorized. We haven't gotten any answer whatsoever, except some utterances here. We read it in some newspapers or translation from them. So we call on Israel now. What is your position on this initiative? Formal position, not just a statement here, formal position, as our position also was formal. If there is an acceptance, authorized acceptance by Israel, then we are on the right track. Therefore, the second point is for us to receive a formal reply about the acceptance of the Arab initiative, which calls on us Arabs to turn the page of the conflict, recognize Israel, normalize with Israel, and have Israel as part of the family of nations in the Middle East, which until now Israel is not. But if Israel also withdraws, allows the Palestinian state to be established, withdraws from the other territories, we see no obstacle for us and for the Israelis to live together and get our act together. When are we going to receive this message? A question mark. The third point,
Secretary General,
okay,
if we have a chance to get a response from the President of Israel, and maybe this is a good time to do that since we're running short of time.
I know that the President is going to take all his time, so you give me 2 more minutes, please.
I don't want to bargain.
Well, you
No,
have
no.
every ceasefire.
We'll be all ears to listen to President Peres.
Well, let's do wrap.
Now, the year 2009. We lived the year 2008 with a lot of promises, and it ended up in a bloodshed. For us to move from an administration to the other, from the year 2000 to the year 2008, then 2009, then 2010, then 2011, this is a gimmick that we are not going to accept. That is why. Now, we are in 2009. If there is real intention, the real work done by the honest broker, the political will be expressed by Israel in favor of peace, and progress will be done, will be made, then we are on the right track. If this year ends, we reach the day 31st of December as we did in 2008 without any result, then we'll have to reconsider. There are a lot of other alternatives, but I believe in what Turkey is saying, and Prime Minister Recep Erdogan said, we cannot reach, and Israel cannot reach any of its goals through military means. We need to have a political settlement, but a fair one, and in the year 2009. Thank you very much.
Important thing that you think they should know about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and how they can directly help that situation?
They should know that the issue is not the existence of Israel. It's not threats to the existence of Israel. The issue is the threats to the existence of the Palestinians. That the situation is not that it is a territory that God has given to a certain people or certain states. God never did so. God never, to the best of my knowledge and your knowledge, I believe, has worked in real estate business to allocate certain piece of land to certain people. This never happened. And talk about that is absolute nonsense. But what should determine the situation is international law. Is international law. Therefore, there is a state called Israel living within certain borders. The security is has to be maintained. But this security should not be at the expense of others. So what is there is that Israel is occupying territories of other people. That in itself is raising a lot of tension between in the region. And the past policies of the United States has made the U.S. pay. Although the U.S. should know and the American people should know that the Arab people themselves are friends of the Americans. And we believe we never felt hate or tension towards the American people, or America as America, the United States, or even the United States policy, until we have seen this tilt, major thing, as if the Arabs are criminals, the Israelis are angels. There are no angels all the way, no criminals all the way. And I don't think that this picture, this image that has been pushed, nurtured, and promoted is correct. The Arabs are friends of America, and they can have peace with Israel, provided that Israel also has the political will and the ability to enter into a fair peace. If there will be no fair peace, there will be no peace. Negotiations, a viable, serious process of negotiations cannot go at the same time with the settlements that are being built in the occupied territories, which affects the territorial integrity of the territories that would be the territory of the new state of Palestine. So to continue building settlements and then ask for continuous negotiations, those are serious contradictions in terms. We see nothing wrong in calling on Israel to join the NPT. This is exactly what the International Conference for the NPT review, which took place in May here in New York, that calls for the universality of the NPT and calling on all countries that have not yet done so to join the NPT. If it is not, this nuclear issue is not handled well and is not handled in a fair fashion, there will be an arms race in the Middle East. It is impossible to have one country only possessing nuclear weapons and trying to, helped by others, of course, by those forces, to be the only one which has. Why should Israel be the only one? This is a question that any one of us is asking himself. And the answer, of course, is no, it shouldn't be the only one. In fact, there should be no nuclear power in the Middle East. We need to ensure that the Middle East is free from all nuclear weapons, all weapons of mass destruction. Thank you.